Welcome to the Werewolf Den, where we do a deep dive into the core concepts and principles behind White Wolf's Werewolf the Apocalypse.
I'm Amylin.
And I am Ryan.
Welcome back. So now, we're moving on. We did our nice little primer around the Umbra. Now we're going to get a little bit more detailed in discussing the infinite possibility of the spirits.
Yes.
So, big key thing that I feel like my best experience is to speak from a storyteller perspective, as it's probably very obvious at this point when it comes to this. Speaking to other storytellers out there, just like how you can tailor your spirits and the Umbra, we discussed last time, to the environments that they are built within, tailor and custom your spirits to your players, because different players are going to summon and manifest spirits in very different ways. And we're going to discuss how basically to kind of do this.
So, speaking of summoning, this is one of those great examples of players having, a great amount of autonomy and influence on the Umbra. And several rights really power up a player's ability to sort of call the shots. One of those is the Rite of Awakening, where you take something that has a dormant spirit and you awaken it. So the player can look for a specific, there is a weed that is growing at the corner of 3rd and Locust Avenue. And it's a very high trafficked area. It's this little sliver of concrete space, and it's blooming from here, and it gets stepped on every day and splashed with dirty water, but it's still there, and I'm going to awaken this. And so your player is coming up with something, and the storyteller basically is being given, the player has their infinity Lego pieces, and they assemble their Lego toy, and they're like, I'm going to play with this. And the storyteller just goes, okay, I don't have to think about this. I don't have to pull a stereotype out of my butt that I always call on when, the players are like, I want to talk to this specific thing. It's very, very easy to take what the players give you and work with that. Mm-hmm. Summoning, even more so, because now you're not confined to sort of the environment that the players have been presented. The players can take from anything. The example when I was a storyteller that I tried to instruct a player on was this player was a Geta Fenris Hamid who was trailer park trash guy. And he was, real blue collar, born in low economic circumstances, wasn't extremely cultured or anything like that. He wasn't highbrow, high society kind of thing. And he wanted to learn this really high powered rune gift. It was the, crud, I can't even remember. It's been so long. But he came up to me and he was, looking for ideas on what sort of spirit he can go to for this. And I was like, well, your character was a kid in the 80s. Your trailer park dude, why not a wrestler? Why not Hulk Hogan? And so I tried to inform him of how you could do this and all the different ways that you could interact with this. Because you could stop at Hulk Hogan, but why not go full bore? Are you talking 1980s, childhood icon, purveyor of vitamins and workout sets for kids that, every Saturday after cartoons, you'd be like, oh, Hulk Hogan, he's my hero, yay, kind of thing? Are you talking about this American icon where he stands for something, abstract in a sense, where he waves the American flag and he's a shepherd for kids, advising them on how to be, good, upstanding people when they grow up and eat your vitamins and stay in school? Are you talking about 2000s Hulk Hogan? Where, you've started watching his reality TV show and you've realized he's a pedophile and he's a terrible person and now he's a Bane? Oh my gosh, we have a worm spirit Hulk Hogan. So many different ways you can interpret that base template. And with the Rite of Summoning, you have absolute control as the player to be all right, I'm getting those vitamins and I'm getting, a Suburban Commando VHS tape and all of these symbols of that aspect of Hulk Hogan I'm trying to summon, and I'm summoning him, and the storyteller runs with that. You have so much control and ability to influence the exact NPC you want to interact with. Super cool. And something that you should really take advantage of with Werewolf.
Mm-hmm. And to further kind of emphasize on this point, you as a storyteller can add to that customization based off of how your players have been playing their characters of very prime example for one that I used is I have a Theurge character who is a lupus, but it's a lupus that's trying to learn about human society, and their way to figure it out is by watching YouTube videos and looking at the internet, because the internet is a bastion of information. And I have learned how to read. My pack has taught me how to read, so I will just consume all of this information. And now you have this wolf who only understands human society based off of what they've read on the internet. And just imagine how that skews someone's perspective. This wolf was like, you know what? I'm gonna try to be clever, and I need to find a spirit that's gonna help me with an investigation. I'm gonna summon Sherlock Holmes to help me with this investigation. Based off of that information, plus that background information, guess which spirit of Sherlock I gave him? I gave him Super Hulock Sherlock. I gave him internet fandom, BBC, Benedict Cumberbatch Sherlock, because that's the one he's familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever I deal with spirits, to me, the Umbra is built off of these abstract concepts that really have no form. But it uses those abstract concepts to create meaning, and within that meaning, they find form. This is how you get representations of, like, unicorn as your totem spirit to the children of Gaia, because unicorn represents something. Unicorn is a symbol of something. Mm-hmm. A unicorn, the shapes in it of itself do not make a unicorn. It is not because it has a horn that gives it meaning. It is the symbol behind the creature that means something.
The associations that it has. That's what matters.
Mm-hmm. And you can very easily then take this and apply it to all of your other spirits, and build it up from this notion of how your player understands things with its little eccentricities, with all of the little bits of just a little bit of information, and create something grand with that information. The spirit of stag that I present to a character Ryan gives me is going to be very different from a spirit of stag that somebody who is a much more reserved and calm player, because that's going to be how those players interpret that better. And that's where the notion of being able to read your players comes in really good with this.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of stag, something that you are really good with, I've talked extensively here about how human culture and human ideas can inform spirits. And obviously we're all human beings playing this game. That's unavoidable. But you are really, really good at taking more primal or lupine aspects and finding ways to describe that with your spirits. So, like, one of the best things you've done in this regard is with stag, where when I ran my LARP, stag was one of those, like, stereotypes I pulled out of my butt, right? Because I have tons of people coming at me for all sorts of things, and I'm like, I need my stereotypes. I need my one-trick NPCs that I can just pull out my butt. And here's this, hoof-legged, big, buff, human torso with a stag head guy, and he's angry and da-da-da. When our Theurge summoned stag in your tabletop, you presented this Miyazaki-like creature where his forms were kind of abstract and far longer than they should be, but not in a discomforting way, in like that Miyazaki kind of sense, where this is clearly an alien entity, right? This is not something that human society has conceived of directly, but these ideas of stag are manifesting. And when you described it, you're describing these things that don't relate specifically to, it's not a big buff torso guy, but it comes off as having that primal aspect of nature. And it just worked so well to emphasize that, you can take human ideas, like Miyazaki's art, and sort of make that work from a lupine perspective as well.
The trick for making it work for a lupine perspective that I use is describing the spirit in more ways than just the way it looks and sounds. I tell my players what the spirit smells like. I tell the players what the air that they breathe in tastes like when the spirit comes into it. And I don't just simply use, like, actual material things. I don't describe the spirit of unicorn as smelling like cinnamon. I describe the spirit of unicorn as smelling like peace and sadness. That was in my most recent game, where, hey, another example of creating spirits that fit with their environment. In the Glasgow game I'm running, did you guys know what the national animal of Scotland is? It's a unicorn!
You want to know what's on the heraldry of the original flag of Scotland? It's a rampant lion.
So, hey, guess what the former tribal totem of the White Howlers is? It's a lion. So now, when Unicorn is in Scotland, when I have Unicorn manifest in Scotland, she wears the skin of a lion as she walks around. And you can take this to mean various different things. Depending on who summons Unicorn, the manifestation changes slightly. But this is a chance of, again, using that culture and that environment around you and using that old lore to create something familiar but new.
Yeah. And again, to sort of emphasize the point we made last time, this is something where every player should have the capacity to engage with it. And with the Umbra, one of the great things about it is you don't need to have, what is the solution to the murder mystery? Who done it with what weapon? You don't need to have that. You can just take these ideas that you've experienced as a human being, throw them into your game, and the players don't necessarily need to know what the silver bullet is to solve the problem. Because you've just presented a problem, and however they interact with it can be the solution, because everything has an impact here. And so, like, for example, there are theurge gifts where you can, like, specifically identify what that spirit is. But if you're doing your job well as a storyteller, players shouldn't need that to rely on. It can help to inform them in what to do, but based on, like, what Amylin said, what do your senses interpret about this spirit? What can you tell that's going on by assessing the situation? And then how can your actions influence that? It's a great opportunity for players to engage with this without knowing, specifically what they should be doing, because there's nothing they should be doing except engaging with your game. And if they're doing that in a meaningful and passionate way, there you go. Run with that. Go with it.
And players, please, please, please do not be scared to fully embrace this. Your storyteller wants you to do this, and if your storyteller doesn't, get a new storyteller.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Why are you playing Werewolf? Oh my gosh.
Your storyteller is going to be so happy to hear you say that you want to learn a gift from a millipede, because it's something new for them to do. It's something where they are not just pulling a rote answer out of their ass in order to do something. It gives them a chance to enjoy the game as well. When you engage and bring your ideas to the table. And spirits in the Umbra are a great way to do this. You can fully bring your ideas, what something means to you, to the table, and run with it. And it makes something so cool. I've been adoring reading, and Ryan and I have both been adoring reading, like, the little comments of little stories that you guys have, of the characters that you come up with and how they interact with spirits. Do that. Share those ideas. Share those stories. Seriously. We love hearing it. I'm certain that, honestly, other people are going to enjoy reading it too. Like, that's why they're here. That's why we have this.
And since we've sort of talked about chiminage, so within the setting, if you want to learn a gift, you have to appease a spirit, and it will sort of instill your spiritual half with that capacity to do that magical thingy-jiggy. Think of this also as a great way to add extra flavor to your gifts when you use them, because the books really don't touch on that a lot. It's just sort of these are the mechanics of it, and learn it from this spirit. First off, treat that as a guide rule, not an absolute rule. If you can only learn odious aroma from a skunk spirit, then your storyteller should be better, because it's limiting. It's limiting and it's constrictive. So one of the things that I learned, my Galliard, is dream speech. And when researching this, I was like, all right, I'd always wanted to learn it from a spirit of Freddy Krueger, but not like, Freddy Krueger the pedophile, but, that like 80s slasher horror fandom is super passionate and fanatic. And it brings together people from all walks of life and gives them this thing that they all have in common that they can talk about, who's your favorite slasher figure, and it's cool. It's a bonding element for humanity. And so I was like, all right, in Glasgow, there's a street called Elm Street. So I am going to summon up the spirit of Freddy Krueger in that, fandom sense, where he's not the pedophile, he is the character and all of the positive aspects of that, right? So I'm not summoning the Bane spirit. I want something more wholesome. And because that's where I'm getting this gift from, right? I did the Chiminage. I got the gift.
I enjoyed running that Chiminage, by the way. He had me just debate with him about who was better, Freddy Krueger or Jason.
And I went out, I had these allies, and one of them was a big horror fan, and I was like, cool. You and me, we're going out for Halloween. I'm going to make the costumes so you don't have to worry about it. And I was like, I'm going to go as Jason because I've got rage. It just works. But I'm going to put all my crafting effort into making her Freddy costume just way better than mine. So when we go out, people are going to be like, that dude was scary, but that was a Bonar cheapen up. And, yeah, I'm Jason. But dang, that Freddy costume was freaking awesome. And so, I'm appeasing the spirit of Freddy Krueger by getting other people to think, oh, that costume was awesome. That was better. But yeah, whenever I use Dreamspeak now, I'm like, oh, I can flavor this because I learned it from Freddy freaking Krueger. So I can't wait to start jumping into the dreams of the Black Spiral dancers in this game and just being like, oh yeah, I learned this gift from Freddy Krueger. So when I show up, there's this sense of dread and the lighting sort of shifts a bit and looks kind of reddish. And all the architecture is a bit more brutalist and just you can flavor your gifts so easily, right? It's kind of effortless because you've devised where you're getting this from. When you use that Arun gift that you learned from Hulk Hogan, maybe you Hulk out when you activate it. Or somewhere in the Umbra you hear that dan, 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 dan. There's so many ways that you can flavor and make these gifts your own.
Oh,
it's just...
That just reminds me so much of the game where you ran, where somebody was desperately trying to learn Rite of the Cairn build, and so they went through all their occult stuff, and they learned it from a bunch of Satanists, and it was
that's a whole different story for another time, I think.
But yeah, the spiritual capacity of the game that's provided by the Umbra, by the spirits, by the rituals, by your gifts themselves are great means of expressing yourself and expressing who your character is. When I play characters that reflect my gender, when I play non-binary characters, I try to find ways to flavor the gifts and the things that they're doing to reflect that perspective of maybe feeling erased or feeling empowered when somebody uses your correct pronouns, and just that kind of feeling that I get when it's a little thing associated with the fact that I am non-binary, but it makes me happy and I can use that feeling to flavor my gifts when I run my NPCs. And yeah, it is so wonderful to be able to express yourself that way. Werewolf gives you that possibility. You can do that with the different spirits that you summon. You can do that with your manifestations of the Umbra. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
So, with that, I feel like we haven't covered everything we could with spirits, but I feel like this is a very good place to stop for now.
I hope it's opened up the ideas of how storytellers and especially players can interact with spirits, and that it makes this a whole game in and of itself, basically, that's thrown into Werewolf and not just, a place where you do other things.
Use spirits in the Umbra as a means to learn something cool and new. Use it to apply knowledge that you learned, but you didn't feel like you would ever use, and so now you get to have fun with it. Use it to fucking express yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so wonderful. It is so cool.
Oh, one last thing I'll mention in this regard. White Wolf did a really bad job with the mechanics about spirits. W20, I had to dig for it, but I found it in how Garou interact in the Umbra. When I was running my LARP with Mind's Eye Theater, the mechanics were that your rage, gnosis, and willpower are essentially kind of your physical, social, and mental traits. And you use them when you're in the Umbra. Spirits use them, obviously, because that's what they've got. And it made all sorts of weird issues. Like, if I'm using a Clave then and I have 1 rage, do I get the weapon stats to that? Do I have now 4 when I'm comparing? And so why would I ever use claws? Because in LARP, they don't give you any bonuses. And, oh my gosh. W20 actually solidified this, where you don't use rage, gnosis, and willpower, you use your normal stats and abilities as a Garu. But spirits still use their rage, gnosis, and willpower, but depending on how powerful that spirit is, you add a multiplier to it. Mm-hmm. So if it's a weeny little gaffling, then it just uses those straight pools. If it's a powerful jaggling or something, you might multiply that by 2. If it's an incarna spirit or something, you multiply it by 3. And so you can get these incredibly powerful entities. And I think that's also something to just be aware of, because the mechanics for this are discombobulated and really hard to find even in W20. But I hope that at least helps to clarify that and also kind of make the Umbra more dangerous, because that Bane Spirit isn't just an expendable thing that you swipe once and it's dead. If it's a powerful Bane Spirit, it has a huge dice pool, and you have to be careful about it. And so I'm going to go into the Umbra to sneak up on the vampire and pop out of the Umbra and attack it becomes a lot more difficult when there's a super powerful Bane attached to that vampire who is going to try and kill you, and can do so very easily because it has a huge dice pool. So yeah, that's something that super frustrated me with the system, especially Mind's Eye Theater. So bad they don't clarify anything. But yeah, don't talk about mechanics often, but I think that mechanic is super important and super obscured away in the rules.
Hopefully it is something that W5 will address. But as it is right now, though, I'm more interested in just the limitless possibilities! Keeping positive. Anyway.
Even if they screw it up, we can headcanon it.
Exactly.
Just don't screw up on being not racist. That's where I want them to not screw up.
Yeah. Anyway, hopefully you were able to walk away with something really cool. Hopefully some of you are going to leave us really cool stories about your interactions.
Yeah. Love to hear them.
Mm-hmm. And then next time, we'll get a little bit more specific, finally.
As we get deeper into the Umbra.
We'll start talking about the different Umbra realms and give you hopefully some tips and tricks on how to run the Umbra realms and not just the infinite void of infinity that is the Umbra itself. See you next time.
Welcome to the Pentex Break Room.
Wow! 20 minutes and you barely scratched the surface? Oh, that's so many ideas to grapple with. Here at Pentex, we want to streamline that and make it far easier. Just use Nexus crawlers. Give them that old ×3 multiplier on their 15 rage and obliterate your players in 1 turn. Or turn them into something silly that'll really offend them and make them hate your game. Easy peasy, nothing more to know than that. Nexus Crawlers, brought to you by Pentex.
Thank you for your purchase. And yes, we did take your credit card and purchase a Nexus Crawler. It will be appearing in your mailbox within the next 5 to 10 minutes. Have a good day.